This week I got to talk with Jeremy Jernigan about his somewhat memoir, somewhat nonfiction book, The Edge of the Inside: When Losing Your Place Means Finding Your Soul. It is a fascinating exploration of going from being a pastor at a megachurch to really redefining what his spirituality meant to him and for others. In The Edge of the Inside, Jeremy shares the raw, unvarnished story of walking away from a dream job at the center of a megachurch, not because he lost faith, but because he found a better one. After spending decades at the center of American evangelicalism as a pastor, leader, and insider, it all eventually unraveled. What felt like failure became an invitation to see faith differently. This is a book for the ones who can't unsee what they've seen, for those who feel the growing tension between the Jesus they love and the Christianity they were handed. It's for the wanderers, the wanderers, and the quietly restless. With humor, honesty, and hard-won hope, this book is for anyone who feels disillusioned with the church, but not done with Jesus. The truth isn't hiding at the center, it's waiting on the edge. And the title of this book has to do with being able to be within a system, but you're like on the edge of the system. So you aren't in the center where you would think the strongest members are, but the center is where even more dogma for anything exists. But being on the edge of the inside is this unique concept from Richard Rohr that allows you to be within an organization or a system while also being almost an outsider and able to critique it and see issues with it. And that is pretty much the premise of this whole book. In the interview, you will hear us bonding over some very specific church kid experiences, as well as pastor's kid experiences. And we just really had way more in common than I even expected. And I just love his approach to inclusivity and faith and spirituality, and the fact that he was willing to leave a church that wanted to silence him for talking about issues related to social justice. So that being said, let's hear from Jeremy. So I am super excited to talk about The Edge of the Inside. But I also did kind of want to get to know a little bit about you before we dive right into it. Did you at any point ever think that you were going to write a book? Even if it wasn't this book, did you ever think you were going to write a book?
Yes.
Okay. Nice. So it was kind of a natural progression.
Yeah, I was like a little kid and I'd read books and I'm like, I'm gonna do this someday. And
yeah.
I just knew like I've always loved words. I've loved how reading something can transport you emotionally, mentally. I love the way your imagination can get lit up. And so I think, yeah, I was always the one that was like, I'm a writer. And then I had to kind of do the thing of like, when can you actually say that? You know, is it like, do you have to be published? Do you have to sell so many? Like, what makes you a writer? And then I've come to the point of like, if you write, you're a writer. And I just make it that simple. And so, yeah, I've always loved it. And I think now this is actually my third book. And I think now like I want to spend more of the rest of my career focused on this end of it.
Oh, that's cool. That is a cool way to kind of find your way to that. And with this one, it's kind of like a blend of memoir and just like general nonfiction. Do you have a process for like starting it? Like, do you know the chapters that you think that you're going to write about? Or is it just like you've had enough bouncing around in your head about something and you just kind of start writing?
Great question. I think each book is different unless you're a writer that writes all the same. Like, you know, if you're like, I write stories in this series, like then it's like probably the process is very similar. For me, each of my books have been a completely different journey. This one was almost therapy for me. It was like, I need to write some of this stuff down and process it. And, you know, I keep like a running journal for myself just to like be aware of my own thoughts. And a lot of this was kind of that of, how am I processing this? What am I doing with this? And then realizing, I think this is beneficial for others to you know, to see in their own journey. And that's been what's cool so far. Some of the early feedback, people are going, oh my gosh, this helped me navigate this thing in my life. And like, that's like the greatest encouragement you could get is not just, hey, you wrote a good book, like who cares, but like
Mm-hmm.
you wrote a book that's helping other people
Yeah.
find words for their story, for their journey. Like that's the coolest thing ever. And so for this one, the only thing I knew was like, man, I got beat up bad.
Yeah.
And this messed me up, and it's taken me years to process it, and I should write about it. Like that's where
Yeah.
this started. And then it morphed into, okay, I'm going to make that part 1, which is like the memoirs part 1. Part
Mm-hmm.
2 is the theology. And then part 3
Mm-hmm.
is kind of like, where do we go from here? Like, let's put it all together.
Yeah.
And that was all later, way later into the process.
Yeah. I mean, you probably had to do a little bit of healing to get to the point of being able to write that third part.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I tried to write this book like 4 times. And
yeah.
the first few times I would try it, it was like I was bitter. I wasn't healed, you know, and so I was still too early. And then Diana Butler Bass had something that she shared. One of her editors had told her that never write about something crucial in your life until 5 years have passed.
That's
and for me, it literally was the 5-year mark, something clicked. And so I had not read that at that point, but I read that afterward. But I was like, wow, that really, there's something about 5 years as a writer that almost gives you enough room to breathe to then write about whatever it is you went through.
Right. Even if, kind of to your point, even if you're journaling while you're going through it, you don't need to publish them yet.
Right. Yeah. Those would not make a great book. Those are, those are my thoughts that I'm working through.
Yeah. Well, what I think is kind of cool about what you're talking about there with how, like, because I had the same experience reading this. We have a lot in common. I'm also a pastor's kid.
All right.
Yeah. Question mark.
Were you the good one or the bad one? Because evidently
I was the completely good one.
Oh,
like,
were you?
Not even. And then I was so scared though that I didn't do anything until I established myself financially and then cut off. So even then it's like, I don't know, like I like edibles. Like I still didn't even have that much of a crazy phase, which I think obviously we all handle things differently. I no judgment for anyone who handled it differently, but some of it, I was like the audio adrenaline reference, the like pink lemonade reference. I had all these references where I was like, oh my gosh, this is my childhood.
You just proved yourself that you're real, because I don't mention audio adrenaline. I reference audio adrenaline, and only someone who knows audio adrenaline gets that reference. So you just earned your street cred right there. Well done, Kate. Well done.
Yes, millennial PK right here. I definitely experienced all of that. But to your point that it's meaningful when people say it really helped me make sense of my life, I think that was making me think how this book, even the title, is kind of based off of something that you heard that Richard Rohr had said about the edge of the inside. It kind of helped things make sense for you. So can you kind of talk about like that inspiration point for the book?
Yeah. So I was doing an event one night, and we were at a wine bar. We were doing a wine flight talking about Jesus, and I was sharing a little bit of my story, and this was still earlier on in it. And someone comes up to me afterward and they're like, Richard Rohr has a phrase that like exactly describes what you're talking about. And I'm like, no, I don't know this. And so they sent me like this PDF that was a part of something else he had done. And in this PDF, he uses the phrase, the edge of the inside. And he talks about this idea that we expect the center to be where real truth is found. But in his experience, it's not found. It's found on the edges, in the margins. And that just, I mean, it was one of those, like, again, why I love words, but like, it like brought something in me to life. And I'm like, that's what I've been trying to describe. Yeah. And that became an early litmus test of like, okay, something I'm getting ready to share this in a different way. Still didn't know that was going to be the book title at that point. That came later. I ended up using the phrase, the edge of the inside, on my website, on my homepage. And I was in a conversation and then I don't even know how, a year later, 2 years later, I was in a conversation with someone, and he saw on my website that, and we were talking about it, and he's like, oh, I really love that. And as I was explaining Richard Rohr's phrase and then talking about my journey, it was like, I was like, that's it. Yeah. That's how, and then like for the next 2 weeks, all I did is write. And it was one of those mad dash inspiration moments where finally the water turned to wine. It clicked. this is how I tell the story without the bitterness, without any of it. And it was literally like unlocking that one piece, that one phrase, everything else flowed out of that. And then literally I wrote the book very quickly after that.
That's really cool. Sometimes it's those realizations that you're like, oh, this is what I needed to be able to even like express myself better about it. And I think it's kind of cool too, as you explain that terminology, it's also kind of like being an insider, but you're on the very edge of the inside. So you're kind of an insider with an almost outsider's experience or perspective.
Yeah.
That can still like see criticism for how something is functioning. And I know you had multiple really difficult situations with churches, and you talking about things that seemed like something Jesus would care about and would want people to talk about. So can you talk about like, I mean, that's what the book is, but the experience of kind of feeling like an outsider because you're not agreeing with what the big group is doing, but still wanting to be a part of it.
Yeah. So, we were talking about being a preacher's kid. And I mean, I can't think of anything more inside than growing up as a preacher's kid, right? Like I'm the kid. I was always at church. I was always in the pews. I would bring my little toy figures and play, during church services. I mean, like I literally grew up in the church. And so all of that was like, that was the air I breathed. It was the water I swam in. I mean, like all of it like was. And I think you just kind of assume like, if that's what you've known, like that you just like, that's what it is. Right. And it's almost like you need something to jolt you out of it. I don't know that you can just, well, maybe you could, but it would take a very mature person, much more mature than I am, to just arbitrarily choose it of like, you know what? I'm just going to choose something better than this. Like for me, I had to be jolted. And it was exactly what you said. Teaching things that I thought were so clearly about Jesus and then getting crazy reaction to it. And then trying to make sense of the reaction of like, why are you guys reacting? And one of the things I talk about, not as much in the book, but I just conversationally talk a lot about this. I think especially right now, we're in a season where a lot of people are trying to make sense of this funky reality that sometimes the people who introduce you to Jesus will have no idea where Jesus is leading you and will not be able to make sense of it.
Yeah.
And that is a disorienting feeling that I don't even know that we talk enough about for people. Because that was my journey leaving the center. It was like all these people who introduced Jesus to me that I'm grateful for. Like there's no bitterness there. All of that I use all like, I thank you. Right. But I kept going, it's like I kept following Jesus. And at some point I lost the rest of you. And that was confusing. When we're talking about the support of Trump or some of these things today that you go, this became the Christian position. Like I don't know that I shifted as much as everyone else you guys shifted, but because you did it in a majority setting, it became normalized. And then the rest of us who didn't fit that, we became ostracized and we had to go on deconstruction journeys or whatever, whatever you call it. And that was what for me was really bizarre. It's like, I never chose to leave the center. I feel like the center left me, if that makes any sense.
No, that totally makes sense. I had like my experience was, so there was physical and emotional abuse growing up. And then there was, as you can imagine, and I clarify this just so everyone knows, it's not what I even think about all religions. Any religion that gets involved in like control and abuse of children, like it's going to go pretty far because you're scared for like your eternal being and like your soul for forever. So once I was an adult, I basically got into therapy, and then I found myself deconstructing in a sense where I would have said, at least for a few years, that I was an atheist. But then I loved, you have a chapter where you kind of talk about how you realize you were kind of always going toward the edge, maybe too. And how you like went into a bookstore and saw all the like read things about Christianity that you'd never heard before. And that as a pastor's kid, you were like, oh, sure. I thought I had like all of the information And I think that's how I felt too. And I was like, if this is all of the information, I have no
Yeah.
interest in this at
Yeah.
all. And then we kind of have made a joke that like then I started hearing like maybe Christian mystics or just other religions in general, and that kind of opened me back up to the very vague and jokeable like spiritual but not religious kind of thing. Oh, I'm losing it. Where am I going with it? Oh, so that was where my deconstruction was going. But then now for me, it's been about staying curious and knowing that there could be different interpretations of all kinds of things. And so now I'm back in like, I don't know, agnostic or something. But we have been joking that in 2025, well, and before that, maybe 2024, maybe starting in 2016, it got so real that I had my come to Jesus moment. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, this is who Jesus was. Like, he sounds like a historical activist that I love, like all these other people.
He seems like, cool.
I'm like, actually, I think I agree with him in general. But then it's very confusing because you're like, well, I've been hearing all of this. And now I'm hearing there's actually a version of even still Christianity that maybe I resonate with or whatever. So and then you went to, I mean, you were a pastor, you went to theology school, you had gone through all of that. Was it always like a search to just find like a version of Christianity that would work for you?
Such an interesting question and insight. It's one of those again, I resonate with the way you said that.
Yeah.
I thought I knew all of Christianity.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? It's like I grew up thinking like I've heard more sermons than any other kid,
Yeah.
you know, my age. Like I listened to my dad preach all the time, and you know, if he wasn't preaching, someone else was, and we were there, you know, and
right.
And so, yeah, you have this thought, and I don't even think it's arrogant. It's just you just like it's your default setting of like, yeah, I've heard all there is to Christianity, and then I remember even being an undergrad, so early 20s, going, you know, I started asking some bigger questions at that point. And I remember this conversation now, and I just laugh about this now. I remember going to one of my favorite Bible profs. This guy was brilliant and helped me learn how to read the Bible differently. And I asked him, I said, okay, I'm looking for a great resource because what I see from Jesus is so intriguing to me, so compelling. And then when I go to the Old Testament, there's so much junk there that doesn't look like Jesus. And I said, what's a great book that you would recommend to me to help navigate? Because again, I was, you know, early 20s trying to establish something deeper. And he's like, oh yeah. So he sends me like the name of it. And so I go and I look it up online, and it's like introductory textbook to the Old Testament. Like not at all what I was asking about. And I'm like, oh, he doesn't know of a resource.
Right.
And so that kind of made me think like, is there more? Like, where do you even find more? You know? And it was kind of this thing. And so that started a journey. So for me, once I graduated, I'm like, I'm going to start reading books that I'd never read before.
Yeah.
So it was like, have you ever read those 4 views books, you know, of like 4 views of the atonement, 4 views of whatever? Super nerdy, very dry, not the most engaging reads.
Right.
However, it was pivotal for me because I started reading these books to realize this thing is way bigger than I had ever heard. And one book in particular was 4 views of divine foreknowledge, which again, probably sounds so nerdy to someone listening to this. Like, this guy,
I think this audience will probably even pick it up.
Okay, because I get self-conscious even as I say this. I'm
no.
These are the books that like put people to sleep, right? But this book is like, how does God know what God knows? And in particular about the future. So like, how does God foreknow things? And it was 4 different arguments. Well, again, I thought, Kate, I'm a preacher's kid. I know this stuff, right? I'm reading things in this. I'm like, what the hell is this? And in particular, I read a view called Open Theism by a guy named Greg Boyd that blew my mind open. I mean, like destroyed something, some, you know, box that I had constructed. And I'm like, I have never even heard a whiff of this. Didn't know. And again, I'm in my late 20s by this point.
Right.
And so I just dive hard into it. And that, I would say since then, I have been on an aggressive journey of, I want to know what I don't know. I want to hear
Mm-hmm.
from people who see this differently than me. And
Yep.
to me, a great book is a book that is it's the first introduction for you to an idea you've never heard before. Now,
Mm-hmm.
again, if you read a lot, it gets hard because you're like,
I
oh yeah, I've
know.
read
You
this
start
idea
to get
before.
crossover.
Yeah. And you're like, oh yeah, I read that with them and then whatever. But
Yeah.
the first time you're exposed to it, right?
Yep.
Those books are magical. When
Yes.
I thought, like, to me, the 4 Views of Divine Foreknowledge isn't the best book in the world, but it
Mm-hmm.
was the first book that exposed me to this idea. And so I have this like emotional connection. I still have this
Yes.
book on my shelf. I will
Oh,
never
I
read this
love
book again.
that.
But I can't like there. And then again,
No.
we're decades later now that book has such an emotional, connection to me. So
Mm-hmm.
that began this journey. And now what I do, and this is the way I describe this book, The Edge of the Inside, I
Mm-hmm.
literally am writing a book for me in my 20s. Like, this is the book I wish I had. And
Yep.
part 2, the theology, has taken me decades to track down elsewhere and then put together in like a summary.
Yeah.
And what's so cool is like my 17-year-old has been
Yeah.
reading this book.
Oh,
And the other night he came to me and he goes, Dad, I don't remember what chapter. It's like, I just read chapter 9 or whatever, one of the theology chapters. And he's like, I was thinking about what you were saying about the Old Testament and how it doesn't look like Jesus. And he's like, that's pretty cool stuff when you figure out how to think about it differently and how to read it. And literally, as I'm listening to him, Kate, I realized you're having the insight at 17 that I
Right.
was asking my Bible prof about in my 20s, and I couldn't find an answer for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is like, oh, this is why I geek out about this stuff. Like, this is like
Well,
so
to have
exciting.
your kids say that too.
Yes. And I'm like, you now are exposed to this idea.
Mm-hmm.
And so his understanding of Christianity, like, I don't know where he'll land on all of these ideas, but he's been exposed to so many more ideas than I was ever exposed to at his age.
Yes.
And, a skeptic might say, yeah, well, you have no idea what slippery slope you just launched him down. And you know what? Fair enough. I have no idea which road they're going to take.
If he was going to maybe question it, he was going to do it no matter what. So
Sure.
at least he's getting like resources and choices and different perspectives. That was really making me think. One of my favorite quotes is like, be who you needed when you were younger, is what like means a lot to me. And I get all, I'm trying not to cry. I get all choked up anytime I see someone getting to do that, where they're like, I wish I had this as a kid. And then when you get to do that, like, it, for me, it also will like heal some of the wounds in the sense that it gives them meaning, or you actually actively give them meaning that way.
Well,
That's cool.
What you're describing is therapy, because like, I'm in therapy and literally one of the things my therapist has instructed me to do is, as an adult, I have to go back to the kid version of me and I have to heal things as the adult version of me.
Yes.
And it is like, what you're saying is so powerful when you're like, I didn't have this understanding. I didn't have this language or this voice back then, but I do now. Yeah. And so I can go back and not only heal the kid version of me, but try to offer this for other people to do the same for their versions. Right. And it's like, it's just so beautiful. This like circle of like helping one another and previous versions of us, I think is really cool.
Yeah. And it's so empowering. You get to be like, at least I still have to do it. If I don't have too many issues with anxiety now, it's there. But when it comes up, I remember I spent like about 10 years in therapy, and how you can be like, it's okay, I've got you now. Like you do the parts where it can separate into your adult self, and then your child self can know like, oh, is an adult here who can handle these things. Like, it's okay. Like, I can be relatively safe just because my adult self is here. So helpful.
Oh, I love it.
So the other thing that you kind of get into, especially since we're talking about there being different facets of Christianity, is, where did it go? Oh, that there's also all this like different versions of theology that people are kind of attracted to. And so, to your point about words, I lately, in this political climate especially, that's what I'm starting to learn too, and therapy, is sometimes people use a word, but it can be interpreted so many different ways, even just one word or one sentence, or someone could say like, I am against, I am for the separation of church and state. And you're like, oh, okay, cool, good. But then they're like, the 10 Commandments needs to be in every single classroom. And you're like, okay, so when you said that, you weren't like meaning
you
what
meant
I
something different
meant.
than I mean by that.
Yes. And one of the things you kind of talk about is the where God guides, God provides. And like the idea that like, if the person experienced something, they feel God told them to do it, then it will happen perfectly. And that, I feel like that might have been kind of the biggest thing that was like a life quake for you, maybe. So yeah, can you kind of talk about that part?
Yeah, I mean, when you're in the center, you feel like if you do the right things,
yeah,
God will bless you. I mean, and sometimes it's said that obviously, and a lot of times it's just kind of implied, by things we say of like, well, did you pray enough? Did you,
yes,
did you tithe? Did you, I mean, like we equate, if you do these certain behaviors, God's gonna, I mean, and I've heard pastors over the years, some of them make it very blunt of like, yeah, just do this and then God's going to show up. And so you're referencing a quote in the book from Rick Warren that, that I love the idea of, wherever God guides, God provides. Like, yeah, like I want that to be true.
Same.
I believe that shows some goodness in God, right? Like God as like this good parent, like leading us along and like, hey, God's going to take care of you. Like, I love that. What I explore in the book, and you're absolutely right, this was a life quake for me, was that quickly leads to, if I do the right things, it will always succeed. And that was my career for a lot of years. I mean, everything just kept building, and it's like, oh, I'm an executive pastor at a mega church, and I've got a budget of $6 million, and I oversee 60 people, and I'm on my early 30s. I mean, it was like an amazing job. Right. And I loved it. And then, at 35, I'm a lead pastor of a multi-site mega church. And I, it's like, this is a dream job. And like, everything was just like up to that point, up and to the right, holistically. Yep. I mean, I had hiccups along the way that I talk about in the book, but holistically, my career kept,
trending
doing that
upwards. Yeah.
And then in 2020, I get to this moment where it's the most obvious of all the moments that had already been leading me this direction. But it was, you can either keep building this thing and your soul will die. Yeah. And you will absolutely become a shell of who you really are. Or you can be who you really are, do what you sense Jesus is nudging you to do, and you're going to lose it all. And the life quake was that didn't fit into my equation. Because it was like, no, I didn't do anything wrong here. I did what I was supposed to do. So why do I lose? And that's what I talk about early on in the book of, I think a lot of us wrestle with this and we're not prepared for it. Right. And I think a lot of Christianity has done a disservice for people of just pray the right prayers, have enough faith, and God's going to show up. Yeah. And God's going to show up if you do it right. Or we imply if something goes wrong, you didn't quite pray right, or you didn't quite do it right. Or, we put it back like victim shaming, and which just totally toxic. But yeah, I think we just need to make room for, you can do everything God wants you to do and absolutely have nothing to show for it. And you can fail. And so, I've even tried to figure out like, what words do I describe? Because I ended up resigning as a lead pastor. Yes. Was it a failure? Was it like, what would I call it? Right. I don't even know, because going back to your earlier thing, it depends on how you're going to use the words and in what context. It's a failure in one sense of, my career did not keep going the way I thought it was going to keep going, right? I thought I was going to retire in that role. So that was a failure. Wow. Yeah. It was not a failure in the sense of, I came to life in brand new ways that would have never happened without this. So I'm incredibly grateful for it now. Yes. But that took me 6 years to be removed to be able to say that. Yeah. I was not working for a church, but I got fired 10 years ago. And I think I was not a personality or politics fit. And I'll just leave it at that. And that's how I feel about it now, though. Like, now I work for myself. My husband and I get to like produce content for people. And it wouldn't have happened if they hadn't fired me for, the things that were happening there. So sometimes it just is, which you include that
I'm trying not to share every part of the book, but you include that story of like the man who's like, could be good, could be bad, we'll see. Like just thinking, knowing something in the moment happens and feels bad doesn't necessarily show you the whole future. And that is what can give you hope when you're in the middle.
Well,
Or like
liminal
you're talking about the
space
liminal
sucks.
space. Yeah.
Yeah, it sucks to be in. And I
Yes.
recently had someone ask me how, I'm trying to think of how they worded the question. It was something like, how do you, essentially what they're asking was like, how do you quickly get out of liminal space? You know? And I was like, I don't think you can do that.
I
Like,
don't think so.
you have to sit there
Yeah.
for as long as it takes. And it sucks.
It
So
does.
it's the worst.
And sometimes when it's that you're truly thinking like maybe I'm about to become a different version of myself, you're also having to kind of like, the best way I've heard to explain it, you kind of have to cosplay this person that you believe you're going to be while you're feeling like shit, even though you're like, I think that's who I want to be, so I'm going to go that direction. And it's very easy to get impatient in the midst of that.
Well, and then you start, you look at your future weird and you look at your past weird in liminal space, right? So you're looking at, am I this person now? Mm-hmm. Am I going to be that person? You know, like, can I be that person? And then you look at your past, and if it's like me, I was like mortified, you know, by like, I can't believe I used to think that.
Yes.
I used to do that. And the most helpful illustration, I use this in the book, is I now think of my past as compost for my future. Like, it had to die, but it didn't die without, you know, contributing to the cause. And so all of that became the compost of who I am now. So there is, you know, I think for early on, people are like, oh, he just sounds bitter. It really isn't a journey of bitterness at all. There is critique and there is, you know, all of that, but not from a place of bitterness, from a place of, hey, I've healed from that. I've moved beyond that. I've worked through all of that. And now I can say what I think is good and what's not good. And so, you know, I try to talk about in the book of like, there's lots of my journey I was very grateful for and I enjoyed and made me who I am today. But lots of it I had to let die. And that's the messy part. It's
disorienting when it happens. Very. Yeah, I had, for multiple reasons, I have a weird thing where it's like the first 19 years of my life doesn't feel like the same person even. and then it feels like my life started basically when it's complicated, but I started therapy and I was financially sound and couldn't have that held over me. And so it's still extremely weird sometimes. One of the first things that happened when I started deconstructing too, though, was like, I felt this, I also have OCD that has like come from religious like rigidity and stuff. So when I was first deconstructing and seeing this stuff, I all of a sudden had like the compulsion. I didn't do it. I had the compulsion. I felt like I needed to apologize to like all these kids in youth group.
Oh man.
Not even for things I did, even like some, but
totally
like
get this.
for like on behalf of my dad. Like I felt like there is a really specific example. There's a music festival called Ichthus, which is like, think for people, Woodstock for Christians is like definitely what it is for anyone who's like Ichthus. And they would always have it also was set up to have like a cry night. And every year they would be on stage telling girls to feel so much shame if they had lost their virginity, and they could all come up on stage and confess and be made pure. And that was like the first memory that came to mind. There was a girl I thought of immediately. I was like, I just want to text her and apologize that like my dad was making her feel that way. I was able to keep it to myself, but I very much have had that experience where I'm like, oh no.
That's amazing.
But I think it also reminds me, I really enjoyed your chapter where you're kind of talking about certainty and how some people even kind of confuse their certainty as faith, which technically, if you're certain, you wouldn't need faith. But that has been what's been so important to me, is to stay open-minded and stay curious and keep hearing other perspectives. So can you kind of talk about, I feel like that's what you have done as well. Like you basically stayed curious through it all.
I love curiosity. I'm writing a blog post right now about it because I just can't stop talking about it.
We love curiosity and empathy over here.
I wish it was a fruit of the spirit. That's what I want to say, because I feel like it's that level. Like I feel like it's a trait of God.
It's kind of an act of love.
I totally think so. And I think curiosity is the gateway for so much good in your life. And when I look at the world right now and I look at the stuff that just weighs on me and depresses the hell out of me, it's because there's no curiosity about reality and people just accept it. And, you know, take any news headline right now and it's like, well, do you actually believe that is the version of reality? You know, and it's like, I don't, you know, and, you know, it used to be if you question things, it was like, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist.
Right.
Now it's like, if you don't question things, I have real concerns about you.
It's willful ignorance.
Like you are burying your head in the sand. And, you know, I think there's so much about Jesus that does not fit into any box. You could spend your entire life. And, you know, there's things that Jesus taught in parables. I love this because you and I could each listen to a parable, read a parable, right? And you could go, I think he's saying this. And I'd be like, what? No, he's saying this. And I think if Jesus were sitting with us, he'd be like, yep. You know, like, wouldn't it clarify, Kate, you were wrong, Jeremy was right. Or, you know, no, he'd be like, yeah, I love it. Love the way you guys, because Jesus said things like, hey, how do you read it? That's like a direct question. How do you read it? He's talking about the scriptures. Shouldn't there be a proper way to read it? Not according to Jesus.
Right.
Because he's like asking, like, how do you read it? To me, this is where it's like, I had so much baggage I had to work through with the church. I did not have a lot of baggage with Jesus because I've always been so fascinated by Jesus. And so even when, I mean, there were moments where it's like, I'm not going to read my Bible right now. I'm not going to go to church right now. I mean, there's moments where I'm like, I need a detox from this stuff because it was like, it's too much. And even in that, I still was drawn to Jesus. And this to me is why curiosity matters, because I think one of the problems is if the only way someone knows about Jesus is through one very particular lens through a church community, then if things go wrong with that church community, they lose their view of Jesus, which is why you have to be curious beyond that. You have to ask questions that your tribe isn't asking. And especially if you lose your tribe or you get kicked out of your tribe, as happens to a lot of us, right? You got to keep asking the questions, because if the only version of Jesus you have was the version your tribe gave you, you haven't fully experienced Jesus.
Right.
And so what I encourage people is like, be curious, like read deeply, ask questions, learn from people who are totally different. And that to me, it's like the older I get, the bigger this whole thing is becoming. And I'm just seeing it, you know, I'm able to see more of it than I ever have. And I'm like, I want to read all of it. I want to hear all the voices, all the perspectives. I soak it all up. I love it.
Right. Well, and since it was, I mean, centuries ago, it's like, of course, there are going to have been multiple people who have written about it, thought about it, used it for good, used it for bad. Like it's such a big subject, and it's not just like the American Christian nationalism that gets into that super fundamental authoritarian stuff. Like it's Christianity that's been global. It's other countries that have done that as well. So it feels like there's just like an unending amount of interpretations. And I do prefer just hearing different perspectives on it. The one thing that I've had some people mention in the comments of some stuff is that how do you approach the fact that you feel like you're staying curious, but then there's also stuff that I very much am like, no, that is not loving, or that's not a loving interpretation. And they're like, well, why can't you just get on board with that? Do you get any questions about that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do. And here's my answer for this.
Yes.
There's an incredible phrase called the paradox of tolerance. Whenever I'm trying to coach someone or encourage someone who's working in this space, a lot of times we'll end up talking about this, because I think this is for those of us who are fostering these kind of conversations, this is something we need to be aware of. The paradox of tolerance is this. If I want to shepherd, use whatever language you want to use, I want to help facilitate a healthy community. I have, in order to make a community that is truly inclusive, I have to be willing to exclude anyone whose desire it is to exclude others in the community.
I love that.
So this is why this is a paradox, because you go, well, that's not inclusive. That's exclusive. It is. It's the paradox of tolerance. Because here's what happens. If I tolerate that person, then what that leads to is a lack of inclusion for whoever it is they're targeting.
Yes.
And this is what a lot of communities do. Well, we're just not going to say anything. And I've taught this, and it gets reactions, right?
Sure.
Where I'm like, if your desire is to come into this community and you're going to alienate anyone, you're going to target anyone, you're going to say, hey, they don't belong. We're going to let you know this isn't a community for you. And again, you get the pushback. Well, how? That's not very open-minded. It's like, no, absolutely. But let me explain to you why. Because for the environment to be truly inclusive, we cannot allow people to come in here and do that. And it's the same thing. If I was, having a party at my house and someone came in and wanted to just go after every single person who I invited over, no good guest would be like, well, sorry, guys, I invited everybody.
Right.
No, you would say, I invited you over and you are attacking everyone that's in my house right now. And like, you're going after, like, you got to leave. And we understand it in a social sense. Like I think every host would be like, whoa. Like, dude, you got to go. Like, this is not okay. But in a spiritual community, we go, well, I don't know. And to me, it's like, no, it has to happen. We have to be willing as the leaders or anyone who has influence to say, if your desire is to exclude others, this isn't the community for you.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I am also reading Chain of Ideas by Ibram X. Kendi, just came out, and it's all about how the Great Replacement theory, which is, for anyone who's like, what are you talking about? Which is a theory that has happened not just in America, it's happened in lots of countries, where the leader, president, whatever, gets to a point where they're like, they want to kind of get more power. And so they're going to say, these Muslim people are becoming too big of a part of our population. They're going to replace us. We're going to have zero power, and our country's never going to be what it was, quote unquote, supposed to be. There's a lot of that happening here. And I really liked how you explained what you just explained, because that, like, with the ICE stuff, I'm like, there's nothing more. You're not allowed here. We exclude you. And also we're going to treat you really, really poorly because we think we've decided you don't belong here, than what ICE is doing right now. And so he's talking in the book about that, about like how like France is kind of going through its own version of that right now, even that kind of started in like 2016, coincidentally. But this fear that starts to happen of like, oh my gosh, we're going to be replaced. We're going to be replaced. We're going to be replaced, which I don't even understand having that fear in general, but it's there. And you talk about how they kind of similar to the where God guides, he will provide. There's this idea that like, if you're following God, you're always going to be a winner, because like, that's what he's doing and he's here for you specifically. But then that kind of leads people to thinking like anything they think is going to be 100% right, and to push people out. And I am not really working myself towards a question. I'm just like saying things that were coming to mind from what you're saying. But do you run into any of those conversations then too with that same topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're describing cultural Christianity, which think about the language that Trump used to get Christians. We're going to have the Supreme Court back. You're going to win again. You're going to have influence again. I mean, literally, these are all the messages to the church. And collectively, the church ate it up and was like, yes, more of this, more power, more prestige, right? Because it's to what you're referencing. We have this idea of like, that's what Christianity should be. We should have the majority. We should win. We should get to legislate our views onto other people. It doesn't matter if it's their body, whatever. Like, we have that right. That's a very culturally Western Christian way of understanding it. Whereas, one of the things I point out in the book is like, look, we follow the guy that didn't get a book deal, didn't have a huge church. In fact, John 6, tons of his disciples left him once they realized what he was really about, and essentially kind of dies alone.
Yes.
Everybody's kind of scared, and not a lot of people there other than the women who braver. But like, this is our model, and so it's like, no, we're gonna follow him, and we're gonna win. It's like, yeah, you're gonna need to rethink that, because following that guy, there is a win in it, but it's not the kind of win that I think cultural Christianity is looking for, which is we have the numbers, we have the influence, we have the majority. And even the way, and again, I say this as a guy, I've spent the majority of my career in mega churches, mega, 10,000 plus. I mean, like, I have been that guy. So I'm saying that as an insider to that conversation, right?
Right.
But that has been historically how we have described, like, these are the healthy churches. These are the ones that are growing, right?
Right.
And I go, I think we've got to point out, like, that doesn't make it good.
No.
Like, because you can, attract thousands of people in a room at one time, and you can get them to pay for the facilities and the moving lights.
Right.
Doesn't make it good. Doesn't make it healthy. Now, it doesn't make it bad inherently, but there's nothing about that. And I think we're seeing that emerge now, where people are like, oh, and so for me, talk about our healing journeys and all this conversation. For me, these days, I do most of my teaching at a small Mennonite church that has one service.
Yes.
And then the second hour, we do a question and response time. And it's like my favorite thing ever.
Yeah.
If you would have told me, Kate, 6 years ago, 10 years, whatever, like, hey, this is what you're going to be doing, I'd be like, nah, I'm going to be, because I preached to thousands of people every weekend. That's like what I did.
Yeah.
And then I was like, you know what? This isn't it.
Yeah.
This isn't what I thought it was. And I'm grateful that, like, for me, I got it out of my system. Like, I got a chance to taste all of that. And then I was like, blech, that is not what I thought it was.
Yes.
Glad I got that experience, because now I don't ever look in that rearview mirror and go, I wonder if we could just grow this thing like 3 times. Like, I don't.
Well, it's also the like end game of capitalism in America is that you should be thinking that way. And it's not that you never should, but it is driven just by capitalism in general, which I've also learned is a word that not all of us agree on what it even means and like what can happen with that. So I won't dive all the way into capitalism, but the other thing I really resonated with, I don't know if you know who Pete Holmes is. He's a comedian who was the first person, once I had maybe considered myself an atheist, like at the very beginning of it, he was the first person that I could tolerate listening to about spirituality. Because
oh my gosh, listening to him talk about God is fascinating.
It's
his
beautiful.
Language is fascinating.
It's fun. Like he's a comedian, for anyone who doesn't know. And then if you know him as a comedian but haven't seen or listened to his podcast, where he like he's had Rob Bell on and so many of the people you were even talking about. Him
and Colbert. Have you seen that?
Oh yes.
His conversation with Colbert was stunning.
So good.
I
adore him as
you are brilliant.
Yeah. And the way he knows how to communicate things, kind of to your point, it's almost like you can hear theology without it feeling really dry just by kind of hearing his journey. But one of the things that connected with me so much for the first time, after feeling like my version of church had been like, yes, it was a community, but it was more panopticon. My parents were reminding me, like, no matter where you go in this small town, like, there are people who know you and know what you're doing. So you better not do anything wrong, which does not feel like community. It feels like a police state.
I got that message too.
Yeah.
They all know you.
Yes. And so like I was like not allowed to drink Mountain Dew. So I was like having my friends hide Mountain Dew. I know.
What was wrong with Mountain Dew?
I don't know. I really cereal that had sugar was called Sin cereal in our house. Like there were so many things that had nothing to do with religion that got.
Were you guys like Baptist? What was this?
Methodist.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
No Mountain Dew, huh?
No Mountain Dew. What were the other? To the point that my friends started calling my parents the restrictive parents. And then when my mom found out about it, she got so angry at me and was like, "You correct those kids. Like, you are a walking example of us." And my dad's like, "You're a walking example of God." Like, so much of that. So that was what quote unquote community was to me and church was to me. And then I heard Pete Holmes talking about why he's like, when I'm looking with a guest, I don't even remember which guest it was, but he does a lot of his in person. And he was like, when I'm like looking into your eyes and you're looking into mine and we're talking about these things that matter to me, this is what church is. Why does church need khakis and a sweater? And I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
like 22 years old. And I'm like, that's crazy. But I loved how you even talked about going to the winery with people and how that felt like it could be church. You have a great quote, but I didn't completely pull that one. But I resonated with that so much. So has that kind of continued to be your experience where you're like, church can happen in so many places?
100%. And I still have church in church environments. So
Right.
I put that as a disclaimer. I still do.
Yeah.
I preached this last weekend. But these days, I'm way more open-minded and intrigued by how it happens in other environments. And for me, as you're referencing, and I talk about this in the book, I began to realize that when you had a glass of wine in front of you, the conversation was holistically different in a good way. Yeah. And I was like, what is it about that? You know? And then it was like, okay. And when we're sitting in a winery and you're just immersed in this beauty of nature and it's just gorgeous and you're looking over the, you know, the vines and the hills and the trees and it's just like stunning. And you have these phenomenal conversations with the people. Like where, I mean, not surfacely. I'm like, you're talking about like deep things with people. They're sharing things with you that I, you know. And so my wife and I, we would take these couples out, you know, on a Saturday, not every week, but like on a Saturday, we'd go out with a couple to the wineries and just have this normal time. Then I'd see him at church the next day and they'd be like, "Good morning, Pastor." You know, they're all put together and it doesn't make them bad people. It's just what they had learned, right? They learned in this environment.
There's a version of code switching when you walk into church.
This is what you do. This is who you are. This is how you talk.
Yeah.
Well, the beauty is, and this is, you know, I think what Pete Holmes is referencing, when you're just talking face to face with someone, there are no rules. There are no expectations. There are no, what am I supposed to, how am I supposed to say this to you? It's like, no, we just talk. We, you know, that's why I love podcasting.
Same.
It's like, it's way more open-ended as a format. Like there's not the time restrictions, not the content restrictions. I mean, it's like, you can just like have the conversations, let them go where they want to go. To me, that has been freeing. And so, so like we do a lot of our conversations in wine bars. We'll do conversations like totally outside the box. I am tackling things that I'm trying to do now from that vantage point. So like one of the things I'm working on is I think, to use heated words that mean different things. For progressives, I would say we have not done a good job helping men find healthy versions of masculinity.
Correct.
And so we have just kind of like hands off because we're going to empower women, which we should be empowering women.
Totally.
But we've left a gap and the conservatives have grabbed the guys for the most part.
Yes.
So I'm trying to work on how do we help men who don't want to be that understand what does healthy masculinity look like? What does it look like? You know? And so one of the things that I do a lot with wine, but my wife was like, hey, you should do like a whiskey thing with guys. Cause you know, guys tend to be more drawn to whiskey. Stereotypes. Here we go. And so I created a wine and whiskey weekend in Oregon for just guys. And we did one last year. And it was basically like, could we get guys who don't know each other together to have a weekend to talk about some things that guys should talk about to be healthier, but probably aren't talking about. And we'll do it around whiskey tastings and wine tastings and do all this. And it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. And it was because the space, right? It was because of the environment. And so I'm doing another one this year and I love it because I couldn't do the same thing I'm doing in a church. Like it just wouldn't work. The guys wouldn't feel safe. They wouldn't be real. But you get them into wine country, you get them around a whiskey tasting, and all of a sudden, I mean, they are sharing things and they are talking about real things. And I mean, guys were crying together. I mean, just like not force stuff, just like you just let the environment and let the conversation go. And so
Yeah.
I'm a huge believer, and this is kind of part 3 of the book, but like whatever
Mm-hmm.
the church is going to look like next, it's not going to be more of the same. It's not going to be more, nonprofit buildings that we attend on Sundays.
Yeah.
Those have their place, and I don't think they're necessarily going to go away. I just
No.
don't think we're going to keep seeing more and more of them. I think we're going to
Yes.
keep seeing more and more expressions that look different. And
Yeah.
I am all on board with that, and I'm here for it. I think it's going to be exciting.
It kind of, as you were saying that also kind of reminds me, I talk a lot on this podcast about there's nonfiction that I love and is very useful, and then there's fiction that I love and sometimes teaches me more than nonfiction does.
Yeah.
And part of that is because your guard might be down a little bit more in fiction, and it might feel a little more organic in fiction to get to kind of experience all of that. It's also very empathy building, but not
I
the
was
point I'm
just
trying
going
to
to say,
make
I
now.
think fiction is the secret to building empathy.
Yes, it
And
is.
the fact that most people won't read fiction is why people suck at empathy so bad. It's like,
I
read fiction
agree.
and get in other people's heads and feel what they feel.
Yes. Long term. It's like, that's the other difference between fiction books and a fiction movie is like you are in their head for 8 to, I mean, if you're doing fantasy, like 20, 24 hours. And you're spending it like with other people. And I love that I then can also experience like different people's cultures, like all of that, even through fiction. But then I also do love nonfiction. Obviously, we're talking about nonfiction right now too. And I was kind of seeing that when you were talking about like there still is going to be the place for like church as a building, but then there's also there's a different realness in other situations. And I liked how you pointed out too, it's not just that it's alcohol. It's not like you guys are like blackout drunk and that's why you're finally like sharing.
We don't even remember the conversations. Yeah.
Right. It's just part of the environment, and like alcohol is just a part of what that environment is, and it's not an environment that's super rigid like literally being in church. So I'd never even thought of it like that, but it is a little bit like nonfiction and fiction as well.
I like that comparison. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and so for me, like as a reader, I read fiction and nonfiction.
Yeah.
And I would, if you said you can only choose one, I would feel like such a loss.
I know, I would
either
too.
way. Like I would feel such a loss because there's such a difference in that. And so to me, it's like, can we have both? Like,
Yeah.
can I have these really beautiful stories? And can I also have people who are willing to take ideas and develop, I really would like both. That's kind of what I envisioned the church. That's what I was trying to do with part 3 of this book is let's have a both future where we're not battling the institutional church. We're not battling the deconstruction community. We're bringing the best of both worlds together creatively for something new. And I think it's like a good book list.
It is a really good book list. Do you want to touch on what you were saying with how you're wanting to help men who are getting mixed and toxic messages about their masculinity? I just watched the Manosphere doc with Louis Theroux last week. For anyone who hasn't, it's on Netflix, and he's literally like, when you think of red pilled, he's interviewing I don't even know all of the men's names, but think like Andrew Tate and people adjacent to him who are telling men. This was like one of the really prominent moments in the doc for me. One guy, they're walking and his fans come up to him and they're like, "You changed my life. Thank you so much. Like everything is so much better because of what you said." And so the documentarian Louis turns to them and he says, like, what did you learn that was like so life-changing for you guys? And he was like, "Well, I am born useless and worthless, and I need to prove my worth via like finances, fitness, and like something else. Like I am always going to have to be striving for my self-worth." And he was like, once I realized that, like I understood why women didn't want to be with me. And Louis like, "Well, what do you think about women?" And he was like, "Well, women are inherently born with beauty, and that's all that they need. They don't need to do anything else." And I was just like, whew. And I was talking to someone else about it, and she was like, it's one of those things where like there's that little shred of truth. Like in general, I earn wisdom the longer that I'm alive. but it's like so perverted to be to the point that you're like, you are useless and women don't want you because you're useless. And the only reason women will want you is because all they have is beauty and they can't do anything either. So how have you been countering some of that messaging basically?
Yeah, I think it's this one of those subjects that's so divided across the aisle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so I'll make a weird comparison here. We'll see if this lands. I think it's kind of like a white person trying to talk about racism.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us who are trying, like I've tried to be an ally and be in that space.
Right.
I constantly have a fear that I'm going to say something that I don't understand, that is incredibly insensitive and reveals my my whiteness in ways that I don't even understand. And someone else is going to be like, I cannot believe he just said that. That's always a fear I live with.
Same.
But I think the work matters enough that I enter into that fear, and I have people around me who could say, hey, don't say it like that.
And you'd probably be okay apologizing when confronted with new information.
There's been times where I've like, hey, I want to say something. I'll ask somebody like, like what would be the right way for me? So I try to even put myself like, I'm not going to decide what the verbiage would be. Like, you tell me what the right verbiage would be. I think it's the same for a lot of men in progressive spaces where it's like, I don't know how to talk about being a man without coming across like I'm anti-women.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think a lot of guys are scared of that, of like, well, I really want to empower women. I really have that desire. So I don't want to say anything. So they kind of just like don't. And the problem is then you have all these guys that you're talking about with all the podcasts and going loud and, and then this messaging is what, gets across. I've got 4 sons. Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm terrified of any of them becoming a fan of Andrew Tate. Like that, you talk about like things that would scare me is like if any of my sons ever like, you know what, I think this is the kind of guy I want to be. So I like pour myself into them of like, what does it mean to be a healthy man? What does healthy masculinity look like? And the problem is, I think for guys, just like for women, a lot of the things we've been told are not healthy and you have to remove them. A lot of this, you got to prove yourself and you got to be this and that. And even things that don't sound harmful, I've started to realize, oh, that's funky too. I'll give you an easy one that may not sound harmful depending on who's listening. But the idea that a guy should provide for his family.
Right.
We go, yeah, that's great. No, that's noble. There's nothing wrong with that. That is common language for a guy. A guy is going to hear that all the time from other guys. Well, you got to make sure you got to provide for your family. And here's what I would say. Let's challenge even that notion. Because what that does is it elevates me uniquely in my family. It devalues anything my wife could do, right? Because now I have to provide. Why do I have a burden uniquely that she doesn't have, right?
Right.
So you start pull the threads on that a little bit and you start going, oh, this is going to reveal some funky things. And, I've had guys say to me, pastors, friends of mine that are like, oh man, my wife makes more than me. It's the worst thing ever. And I literally am confused by this. Yeah. Like, because Kate, their manhood is attached to it.
Yes.
So it's a value system. And you have to get under the layers of that to go, okay, what is it you believe about being a man that makes you feel that when your wife makes more than you? My wife has made more than me since I left being a lead pastor.
Right. Yeah.
And I would be lying to you if I told you that never pinged my ego. It has, because I live in this culture. It's being reinforced. But it's been great for me to go, I am okay with this. Now, again, I don't expect her to carry all the way either. So it's like, it's not like, hey, you should do it. But I don't expect that it falls on me uniquely either. And so if she makes more than me, great. Are we both doing what we love? And are we both able to contribute to our family? Like that to me is the conversation. So I think what we've got to do, and again, I'm early in this work, so I don't even know, but Richard Rohr has a book I just bought that I want to dive into of like, what does it mean to get a few layers down into some of the things that we believe? And I think about things that were said to me, like, again, that don't seem weird, but like, I remember one time, I'll keep this somewhat vague. I remember one time we were at a family gathering and my wife had driven us there. And one of my family members is like, "Oh, she drives?"
Oh my gosh. Yes, she knows how to drive.
And it was an indictment, casually on my manhood.
Yes.
Like something's wrong with me as a man that I allowed my wife to drive us as a family, or I don't remember the deals. But I remember thinking, should I be bothered? Like should this bother my manhood? Because it didn't, and I was like, why would it bother my manhood? Right. But I think guys have all these kind of weird things like that are in the culture. And then you get these Andrew Tates, the Joe Rogans, these voices that are just pumping these ideas into men. And so I think we have to do better than just hoping other men rise above it and, develop healthy masculinity. Like we have to actually make it part of the conversation. And it's going to take women helping men to do this, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. We still have to a little bit. You mentioned your wife though. And so coincidentally, the way that I discovered you was TikTok. And I love, she will like ask a question and then like run up to you and then you'll kind of explain your thoughts on that. What was kind of the origin of doing things that way? Was it just like you did it one time and then you're like, oh, this is a good idea? Cause I think it's such a perfect way, especially on TikTok, to like share this information.
So it's totally my wife's idea.
Nice.
And here's what she loves more than anything. And this is taking me a lot to admit to you, Kate. I get more traction on those videos than anything else I do. Yeah. Any sermon videos I do, any blogs I do. Probably more than the book I'm about to release.
Right? But I've seen lots of questions. Yeah. Go ahead.
That is the thing that like people know me for. It's like, we call him Jer. I have a question. Which is,
I love it.
My wife calls me Jer. So it's Jer. I have a question. And what that came from is we just have these conversations all the time anyways. Yeah. And her background is not theology. She's got her own things that she's very much an expert on that I ask her about. But she's like, hey, I think other people might like these theology questions. Like, so when I'm asking you a theology question, well, let's record it. And so literally what she does is she'll film herself saying, Jer, I have a question. And then she films her feet. And then it's her feet walking really from her desk to my desk in our home. And she speeds it up and adds like a little, so it's her feet walking. So if we ever need an OnlyFans, we've got tons of footage. We'll be good for that.
I know.
So then she gets to my office and then she'll say like, and I don't know the questions that are coming. So like, she's really good at looking at things that people are talking about and then figuring out like, what's the theological
what's at the core of it.
So she'll ask me and it's off the top of my head. We just banter back and forth. They're 3 minutes or less. And I feel like when I die on my grave, we'll say, Jer, I have a question. And that'll be what I'm known for. But yeah, it just works. And I've asked her, because like we've done over 100 of these now. And I was like, why does this work more than anything else that I do? Yeah. And her take is she's like, because people want the real conversation, not the polished presentation of it. And she's like, they can get your thought through polished presentations on everything else, which is like, I think people like just seeing behind the scenes of like, what's your reaction to something that you don't know is coming. And I do think there's an element to that. So and
it feels spontaneous. I didn't know if you were prepping for it at all.
No, I don't know what's coming.
I think on social media a lot, if it feels spontaneous, people are like, oh, I might be able to believe this more or enjoy listening to this more. Probably helps that she's on screen for a second too. Like not just a man. Maybe that's part of it too.
Well, we have gotten complaints. People are like, why are you having a man explain everything?
Oh,
and she had to jump on. She's like, look, this was my idea.
Yeah.
And she's like, this is my husband and this is his expertise. Like, this is what he does. Like, she's like, he spends all day long thinking about this stuff. So I like to have his opinion on this. And she's like, he asks me about other things, but we don't have an equivalent series, of, she's in real estate. So if we had like
that's crazy. My husband's whole family's in real estate.
Yeah.
Real estate and theology and Christianity. We've got them in common. Yeah. That was really cool, is how I found you. And it was so wild. You're published by Quar as of the day that this is airing and it has come out. And I think I saw you after Keith Giles reached out to me about his Quantum Gospel of Mary. So I had him on.
Yeah, I saw
And
he was just on.
I was just seeing yours more and more and more. I was like, oh my gosh, I love these interpretations. I think I saw a lot about the Old Testament, which is obviously something that also is very confusing for me. And then I made it to the end. I typically do make it to the end of all of them. And you mentioned your book, and one of them was maybe what it was. And I was like, wait a second, there's a book involved. And then when I looked you up and saw Quar, I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I need to talk to him. So social media can be used for good. There are a lot of people who think like the internet, they're like, it sucks. I'm like, the people suck on the internet. In real life, people are great on the internet. Like it's a spectrum, but they worked at grabbing my attention at least. So
I'll let Michelle know.
Yes.
Now we're friends, Kate, because of a random TikTok.
Yes, totally. Well, I loved our conversation, if you could not tell. And I'm so glad there are people talking about these issues and publishing stuff about these issues. Like I mentioned, people can go buy it now. It is out. I do typically ask at the end, typically more with fiction people, but it sounds like you read nonfiction and fiction anyway. But are there, and it might be the books you already talked about, are there books that you loved recently and would recommend? Or are there books you recommend to like everyone, or like something that you always recommend?
Fiction only? Or
no, it can be anything.
Oh gosh, I try to read 100 books a year. That's my goal.
Same.
You have 100 goal?
Yeah.
Nice. I didn't hit it last year and I felt shame for it. I got
it was the 94. First year I did, and it was only because of audiobooks. That's the only reason I can confidently do it.
Okay, so I have to like literally pull up my Goodreads to remember everything I've read. That's okay. But the last book that I read that I was like, whoa, this is really beautiful, is Theo of Golden.
Oh, yeah. I keep seeing that cover.
Have you read this?
I haven't read it. No.
So this is a fictional story, and I loved it. I really thought it was profound. It's an engaging story. It starts to feel a little redundant at parts, and then you're like, okay, it's kind of the same thing happening. And then you start to realize that there's a bigger story that is kind of being teased out. That's going under the whole time. And so that's why I would say like work all the way through it. Even if I got to a moment, I was like, I don't know, this is going to deliver. It did. Nice. So I'm grateful I kept in it. But I think right now, and this is one of the things So I host an online community for people who are trying to like navigate these ideas in real time. One of them gave me really good feedback recently, because a lot of stuff, I feel like when things are dark, you've got to like get into the darkness and like understand it. Yes. So we'll do like book studies in our online thing. And I like the last book, one of the last ones we went through was James Cone, The Cross, and oh gosh, I'm totally blanking on this name. The lynching tree. There it is.
Oh, yes. I just listened to that one a couple of months ago. Okay, go ahead.
Well, super heavy.
Yes.
He's talking about the history of lynching in America, and but to me, it's like the reason I'm like, well, we need to read this because we're seeing this happening. And someone literally like, I can only handle so much of like all of this. And it was a good reminder to me of like, okay, yeah, we have to help people come up for air.
Yes.
So I'm going to have our community go through Theo of Golden as our next book, because it's an uplifting book in the sense of we each have a part to play that we can bring beauty into the world. And the book talks so much about beauty, and it's this idea of bringing beauty into things that may not have them. And I found it so compelling. And my daughter is 14. She's reading it right now.
Oh, that's cool.
She's my super reader. And she's loving it. Although she just got to a tough scene last night, came in crying.
Oh,
and she's like such an empath.
Same.
And I was like, keep reading, keep reading. She's like, okay, Dad.
Yes. That's awesome. It's funny that you bring that up though. I have the same tendency. So when things started to just feel a lot like they were escalating, kind of like to the last 2 years especially, I find solace or grounding in reading even like historical horror, like actually like Tanana Reeve Du's like The Reformatory. Someone was like, how are you reading that right now? And I'm like, for me, it like helps me to hear
Hmm.
that other people have gone through this stuff and they were still able to find ways to maybe not rise above it completely, because it's kind of hard to rise above like white supremacy if but the ways they found joy, the ways they navigated it, or even just like some of the comfort that like Ryan Holiday had a reel a few couple months ago where he's like, so you think you're the first person to live through political unrest? Like, you think you're the first person to live through violence? Like, you're not. And I'm not saying this in a nihilistic way. It's just like other people have gone through it. So I'm the same way. I definitely still have some like maybe like popcorn thrillers every now and then. But for me, it like helps me to like actually read darker things right
Okay.
now. So I'm with you.
Okay, but I want to ask you a follow-up question to that.
Yes.
Have you ever read a book? Because if we're both like this,
Mm-hmm.
have you ever read a book that you're like, oh, that one's going to mess me up? Like that was too far. I'll give you 2 examples for me that
Yeah.
like, if you said to me right now, you have to read them, I'd be like, I'm not reading these books right now. I'll give you 3. The Road by Cormac McCarthy
Okay. I haven't.
depressed the hell out of me.
Yeah.
Silence by, I think it's Sasaki Endo,
Okay.
messed me up. And then the Gulag Archipelago.
Whew. I can only imagine.
All those books, like I read them and I'm like, I need to go for a walk. I mean, it was just like I was in a funk after them. So my question to you is, if you are like me and you process through the negative, do you ever bite off more than you can chew? And you're like, oh.
There was one. That's a good question because I haven't had one in a little bit. And the Reformatory felt like it was going to be like that. And then the author, I'm not trying to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it, but the author talked about how like she wanted to write a different ending because it's loosely inspired by like her great grandpa or something like that. I can't remember how many generations, but also surprisingly, I loved this book. It's called Kin by Tayari Jones that I just read. And it wasn't the whole book that was like that. I did not think the ending was going to be as devastating as it was. And I was walking on the treadmill listening to it. And all of a sudden I'm just sobbing on the treadmill. And I was like, oh no, I didn't think this is where it was headed. There's definitely been nonfiction. Some of reading, I read a book called Original Sins by, I can't think of her name. But it's all about the way we Americans used education to civilize, for people who aren't watching, I'm heavily using quotation marks, the indigenous and Black population. Some of the stuff in there, I was like, I think I need to take it a couple chapters at a time. And Nobody's Girl by Virginia Giuffre, who is one of the first victims who spoke out against Epstein and Trump. That one's pretty devastating. So there have been books where I've been like, I can only let myself do a chapter a day and it's okay to just like take my time with it.
Yeah. What do you think the role of those books are?
For me, in some cases, so like with Virginia's, I knew it was going to be very uncomfortable, but the quote I brought up that was like, be who you wanted when you were younger. I wish someone could have seen what was happening and not been not maliciously, but thinking like, oh, she's a pastor's kid, nothing bad could be happening at home. And so some of it for me is kind of the, like, to use a very church word, some of it is to like witness, because like I wish people cared and wanted to like know what my experiences were. And then other ones help me understand how people got through really dark times. Yeah. What about you?
I don't like the last 2 I mentioned, the Gulag Archipelago was like, I didn't realize how horrible humans can be to one another.
That's what freaks me out.
And the level of like depravity in that messed me up, where I was like, oh gosh, like we're capable of this. So I think it's healthy in the sense of that is real life. It's describing something that historically happened. So to be unaware of that, right? Let's go back to curiosity.
Yes.
I should be aware of reality. That is real. So I think you need to make space for it.
I agree.
I also think it would be crippling to try to carry that with you, or
all
like,
the time.
I'm going to think about this often. And then, you know, the book Silence, which was made into a movie. I'll confess, I didn't go see the movie because I'm like, that book jacked me up so bad.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could handle the movie version.
Right.
But it's all about torture and your belief and giving up what you believe over torture. And it was like just mind game.
Terrible.
I mean, it was like, but I'll also confess, I'm so sensitive. I've learned this about myself. I can't watch scary movies.
Oh no.
Because my brain, I can't turn it off afterward.
Yeah.
And so I just have learned, like the last scary movie I watched, like truly like kind of thriller. This will tell you how lame I am, was The Ring.
Oh wow. That was a while ago.
Yeah. I was in college.
Yeah.
I couldn't stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I had this epiphany where I was like, if I can't control these thoughts, why am I putting them in there to then set up shop and I can't control them? And what I've learned is other people can control their thoughts when it comes to scary stuff. Like they can watch the Saw movies and be like, yeah, let's go get popcorn. I'm like, I would not be able to function after those movies, right? Yeah. And so even when you're talking about like reading, I don't remember how you describe the genre.
Which genre?
Your horror?
Oh, genre? Yeah, historical horror.
Historical horror. Like, that sounds awful to me. I'm like, that would scar me.
Yes.
So I think there's something to knowing how you're sensitive, and it's different for every single person, right?
Yes.
Like, I'm sensitive in this way, whereas you like, that doesn't do anything to me. But you might have a total sensitivity to something that I'm like, oh, I read that all the time. It's fine.
Right.
So I do think there's something like learning yourself, but it's interesting when you get to those books that you're like, this one's going to jack you up.
I know. I'm having somewhat of a similar experience with this, and this might be some other people too. I had not watched The Pit, which is on HBO, and it's an ER drama basically, but each episode is just an hour of the shift. So each season is just one 15-hour shift. And it is so heavy. Like they're nailing how difficult I don't know how some people are healthcare providers, for example. So like that's something like I don't know if I could survive working in an ER and like the things they have to accept about death every single day that like most of us don't have to. And I was just talking to my friend about it who had told me like, no, you really have to start. And I was like, I can't binge this show. Like I know it. I just can't. Like 2 is enough for me. Like it'll take me some time. And he was like, oh, my mom and I burned through like 4 episodes the first day. But then there are things that like I read that he's like, I have no interest in going there. So it is all different. Like there was a child death last night and I texted him and I was like, this didn't even make you cry? And he was like, no. And I was like, I'm sobbing. So yeah, you just have to know, and circumstantially sometimes it depends on what's happening in your life.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, well, I feel like we could probably talk forever.
I'm enjoying it. I feel like a lot to learn from you.
Well, same. This helped me a lot too. Where should people follow you to stay up to date with everything?
So my website is jeremyjernigan.com. That is where I have everything. So all the podcasts I do, social media links, I write a weekly blog post. So that's kind of like the one-stop shop for everything. I'm on some of the socials that I like. So I do TikTok and Instagram primarily. I have an account on Threads and Facebook that I rarely use, but TikTok and Instagram are the 2 I use the most. And then edgeoftheinside.com is the website for the book, and you can find all the different things out there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming and talking about it, and thank you for writing about this stuff.
Well, thank you for the invitation to geek out on things that we like about books and our journeys that are very similar and how we've healed from them. Exactly. I mean, I feel like we've come full circle on so many things. This has been a fun conversation.
it's good that it can happen.
I love it.